Hi, this is Brad Town from Wolfgang's Vault, and I'm sitting here with David Lowery of the bands Camper Van Beethoven and Cracker. They just performed a few songs for us in with various band members. This is sort of a homecoming show that you're playing tonight in a way. I mean, you guys came together in Santa Cruz, not too far away from here.
Right.
And is that sort of, you still feel sort of a connection to this area in a way?
Oh, yes. Yeah, definitely the Bay Area is like, our home territory. And,
yeah.
It's where we first sort of played gigs that people actually paid us to play.
Sure.
That we didn't have to beg for. And, this is like a homecoming. And this has been now a tradition that's probably going on a decade now. We had a short break in it, but we play right after Christmas, a few shows in the Bay Area.
And where were you just coming from? Because I think I heard you saying you've got some bandmates stranded somewhere right now, right?
Well, our rhythm section for Cracker lives in New York, and they got stranded in New York because of that. So we're having Michael Urbano, who's from the Bay Area, who used to play drums with Crackers, playing with us, and Victor, the bass player in Camper Van Beethoven, of course, has played with both bands. So,
yeah, sure.
It's fine. Worked out. It'll work out.
Yeah, that's good. With a big family of musicians to be able to pull from, you can always make the gig.
Right.
So yeah, starting out in Santa Cruz, what was the scene like back then in around Santa Cruz? Were there a lot of bands going on, or was it kind of?
Yeah, there were actually quite a number of bands in Santa Cruz, and the interesting thing about Santa Cruz at the time when we were there, I mean, we're talking the very early 80s, like 1980, 1985, 86, essentially, is the time. It was really inexpensive down there. Silicon Valley hadn't happened, so Silicon Beach hadn't happened. And it was much easier to be down in Santa Cruz and be in a band because it was cheaper to live down there. You didn't really need a car. You could just kind of work some part-time job and ride your bike to work. And there were places to rehearse, and it was a lot easier. And the other thing that was interesting about the Santa Cruz scene is it sort of had this subtle kind of anti-hipster vibe to it. Like we distinguished ourselves from what was going on in the Bay Area, which was sort of cooler and more punk rock and darker, but the things that were going on in San Francisco at the time. We were different than that, so we were lighter, a little more psychedelic. Right. There was a lot of sense of humor that ran through a lot of the things that the bands in Santa Cruz had. I was in a band before Camper Van Beethoven called Box of Laughs, which was pretty heavily influenced by things like Pere Ubu and The Fall and Red Crayola and stuff like that. And we were actually even really kind of influenced by another band from Santa Cruz called Joe Cuba and the Tokyo Negroes, which was really esoteric punk Captain Beefheart kind of hybrid kind of thing. So we grew organically out of that scene. And when we came up, Camper Van Beethoven started as a side project to all these other bands that we were in. And when we came up to San Francisco to play, we had the advantage of sounding a little different than everything else that was going on in San Francisco, which, like I said, was more punk rock and was decidedly darker than what we were doing. And so I think that worked to our advantage when we came up here.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, because it seems like Santa Cruz is a place that would kind of lend itself to that. But it's got those sort of friendly vibes, I guess, in a way.
There's a lot of pot smoking and hippies and skateboard riding and stuff like that, and a lot of freaks, tinfoil hatters.
Right.
It was just a freak show down there. So it worked well for us. It really was that sort of perfect blend of hippie and punk rock that later sort of you see in the early alternative bands like Jane's Addiction and stuff like that,
Yeah, for sure. And to me,
that was going on. A lot of tattooing and piercing and dreadlocks.
Yeah, that's a distinctly Californian thing, I find. Is that those kind of sounds kind of mixed a little bit better here than in other places where it seemed like there was you're either punk rock or you're this or you're that.
Right.
So yeah, you guys definitely have that sort of sound. And so I guess sort of fast forwarding a bit to today, you said that Camper Van Beethoven started as kind of a side project. And then as well today, everyone that's in the band kind of has multiple things going on at any sort of given time. Is that right? You guys kind of are doing, each guy kind of has his own band, and then there's Cracker, and there's...
Yeah. Camper Van Beethoven is definitely more the sort of anarcho-syndicalist, libertarian, hippie punk rock commune kind of band, right? And we sort of freely sort of come and go and form and unform and unform. Yeah, I'm going with that. I'm going with that jargon watch here. Unform and reform in different ways, and that works well for us.
Yeah, that's good. And so I guess sort of your experiences individually with bands, you sort of will come apart and then come back together and have new ideas and things like that that'll sort of inform what you're doing together. Yeah,
absolutely. Bring in a little bit of the side projects, make Camper Van Beethoven interesting. Yeah,
sure. You mentioned earlier when you were during your performance, you were playing a song from your solo album that's coming out pretty soon. And you had mentioned that you guys had done a tour of Iraq. Was that Camper and Cracker? Or?
That was just Cracker, but we brought Greg Leisher along from Camper Van Beethoven, right. So we actually did play Camper Van Beethoven songs there. And that was fairly odd because, we were to a man, against the war, but of course Johnny Hickman and I are from military families. And we also understand it's a lot more complicated than that. And we had a song on the last Cracker record that was sort of adopted by many guys in the military, even though it's ostensibly an anti-war song.
Sure.
Well, but it's more about kind of being bored. And anyway, these guys kind of picked up on it, and it got played on Armed Forces radio. So we found ourselves in Iraq, and that was really pretty interesting. We went to a lot of. We did something that only a couple other bands I've talked to have done, which is we were asked to go to these little patrol bases, not even forward operating bases, even smaller than that, little patrol bases sometimes. We played on the big bases, but we also would go out in helicopters or in armored personnel carriers out to these little bases that maybe had 35, 100 people at them, and play for these guys that never get live music.
That's
and we had to dress completely in full Kevlar and everything like that.
Yeah, right. Did you have any sort of training, or did they kind of warn you about what?
The only thing they ever did was show us how to get out of your seatbelts upside down in a armored personnel carrier. But that sort of turned into this game where it's this machine that simulates you turning upside down. Well, they turn you upside down. That was about the most training we had. We got a little first aid tips.
Yeah, right. As needed, ad hoc first aid.
And it's funny. It's like all the briefings were much scarier than anything we actually ever did over there. So, it was fun. And it was actually most of the time it was generally a lot of fun. And we were I was actually really surprised how many people. There's so many reserves and National Guard guys over there, and they're more our age, right? And there was a lot of awareness of not only, Cracker, but my history with Camper Van Beethoven and stuff. I remember landing in, I think it was in Talil, and we just, almost the first thing out of one of the officers' mouths is like, "Are you going to be playing any Camper Van Beethoven today?" And I'm just thinking I'm in we're really close to Babylon. I think it's by Babylon, the ziggurat of Ur, where we were. I'm like, this is really crazy.
Yeah.
I can't really comprehend all of this.
Hard to process.
Yeah. But it was we enjoyed ourselves.
Good. And those experiences, I guess, are sort of what informed the album that's coming out?
Well, just one song on the album. It's called "I Sold the Arabs the Moon." I was just sort of marveling that, sitting in, I can't remember if it's called Camp Victory or Camp Liberty now, but it's basically the Baghdad International Airport, the base attached to it. And I just kind of marveling about this sort of massive amount of technology that we sort of brought to bear in that country, and it's all about our satellites and our prowess in the air as a culture or a nation. And I started thinking about that. I read a lot of history books before we went to Iraq, just so I felt like I was informed.
Sure.
And that's why, at first that area was ruled by the Arabs who could navigate the deserts at night under the moon. And then the English, of course, dominated it with their warships, and then the Americans finally with their space aircraft, UAVs and stuff like that. And that's what that little song was. It was just a little snippet of that.
Yeah, great. So in addition to the solo work and the two bands, you also do a considerable amount of work at a studio in Virginia, right? The Sound of Music studio?
Yeah, I do. I'm not so much anymore. I've been pretty busy with my music lately, so haven't been producing people's stuff as much. But yeah, I've had the studio in Richmond, Virginia for about 17, 18 years now. And yeah, I do a lot of producing there, but like I say, I've been busy lately with my own stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Well, that's good. So we're coming up on New Year's here. Do you guys have any plans going forward? You got any solo tour for you, or are you continuing with the Camper Cracker tours?
We're going to do, we have a New Year's show with Cracker in Charlottesville, which I live in Virginia now, so that also acts like a hometown for me. We're going to do these shows after the New Year's with Cracker playing Key Lime Pie and Camper Van... sorry, that would be interesting. Camper Van Beethoven playing Key Lime Pie and Cracker playing Kerosene Hat. We're going to kind of play our two sort of biggest records for both bands. And we're going to do a few shows like that. I imagine I'll do a few solo shows for my album that's coming out in February. But not really sure yet.
Yeah.
We'll play it by ear.
Yeah, right. Let it unfold as it will. Cool. Well, I think that's all I had. Thank you so much for being here. All of you guys, in fact. It was really, really great. Sounded great. And
thank you.
We're happy for having you.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Oof.